So today we're going to talk about your table of contents. Create your table of contents using your stories and your message. So now that you have done your legwork, it is time to start your writing. And that can take many, many forms. I have had clients who for years wrote themselves little text messages when something interesting or funny would happen. And that's how they documented a lot of the things that had happened. When they were ready to write the book, probably 5 years later, they were forwarding me all of their text messages, and I was able to take those and put them into a document and use that as our framework for the book, which was pretty cool. I had another person that used Notepad, which we don't see that very often, but that's how they wrote their book. And then I had to take it and put it into a word processing document. So there was a lot of editing because of the formatting, but it worked. And so do whatever you need to do to get your message out. Another concept that's used quite often in today's world is tape yourself. If you're giving a speech, have a lapel recorder on so that you can record your speech and then get it transcribed either through a service like Temi, T-E-M-I, or Otter, O-T-T-E-R, or go to professional transcription service. And if you use a tool like Zoom, a lot of times they provide a transcript for you. Now, if you're using artificial intelligence for these transcripts, they're usually about 80% correct. So you definitely have to go through and edit, but it's absolutely a starting point. And if you use a tool like Zoom and you have video, now you can repurpose your information. So you could use it on Vimeo or YouTube, as well as a podcast, as well as your book. And so it's kind of nice to be able to do that. Okay, so the next strategy that I've learned about and I've used with some of my clients is your Post-it note strategy. So if you're not sure what you're doing, jot down on Post-it notes each story or each concept or each thing that you want to share. And when you do that, now you can start to put it, like I would put it like up here on the wall and then rearrange it so that you can kind of see what categories emerge from that. And you might end up with your chapters or your sections of the book. Another thing you can do is to be purposeful and to decide, I want to write this book. I want to write it on leadership. These are the things that I want to say. For instance, I worked with somebody that was high up in the Marines and in the Veterans Affairs. And so as we helped to work on her book, Leadership Lessons, we ended up spelling out Marines. So each letter represented a different key ingredient to be a good leader. So once you have the concepts and you've organized them, now you can kind of start. The next thing I want to talk about is stories and takeaways. So they say facts tell and stories tell. So and I'm guilty of this. I write and I give you all the facts. And then when people read it before I publish it, they're like, this is too dry. I need stories. I need to be able to relate to it. So I have several books that I haven't yet published because I have to go back and create that relational thing, that connection thing that I didn't have in my first, when I first did my book. And so facts tell, stories tell. I'm sure you've heard that. People want interesting stories, but those stories need to drill home the message that you're trying to help your audience connect to, relate to, and solve. The more powerfully you strike a person's emotions and heart, the more change will happen. And so you want to be vulnerable, you want to be real, you want to be authentic. And you want to keep in mind, what is your purpose? Are you just giving information? Are you trying to change or impact a person, an organization, or the world? So you want to be able to think about this as you figure out what's going to go into each chapter. So again, as you narrow out your main sections, your main chapters, then which story supports the concept for that chapter? What is the takeaway that you want your avatar, your customer to experience? And how will you best communicate that? I'm going to do a side note right now. If you're writing a fiction story, there's a lot more to it, but you really want your characters to be relatable, and you want to kind of understand how to create conflict, and then solve it, create conflict again, solve it, create conflict again, solve it. There's something called the hero's story that you can connect more with. The last thing I want to talk about today is your photos and your quotes and what to include. So if you use photographs, are they your own? If they are your own, awesome. If there's somebody else's, did you get permission in writing to use them in your book? When I wrote my book, I had to reach out to the people that created these body maps so that I could get permission to use them in my materials. There's also, you can go into Google and you can search for images, and then you can search for tools, and under tools I think it's something like user rights, and you want to search for Creative Commons, things that you can use commercially, where sometimes you just have to give them credit, sometimes they don't even care, sometimes you can take their images and change them a little bit, sometimes you have to use the images as is. Also picture excuse me, pictures in the public domain. And then for quotes, are you quoting somebody? What's the source? If you went to a website, what date did you visit it? Get that information as you're doing your research. Give people credit when you quote them. There's kind of a gray area of 150 to 200 words you can use without quoting. However, I like to err on the side of being cautious. Tony Robbins was sued for using 7 words. So there's not a clear, defined, this is how many words that you can use. Let's see. And when you search the images, when you search the internet, again, make sure that you have your sources. So if you want to have help in going from the concept of your book into writing and getting it published in 90 days, check out my program, Write Your Heart Out. You can find more information at bettynorlin.com, BettyNorlin.com. Thank you.